Hey guys, Chris Dunn here, aka the Boogie Man. Welcome to South Carolina in July, and it's hotter than 14 hells. I ain't trying to be mean, I'm just telling you the truth. I was born and raised here, and I still to this day cannot stand the heat. I can deal with the winter time because I can work to stay warm. I just cannot work fast enough seems to stay cool. I just can't get the wind over me, but that's just being in the South. On this episode, guys, we're going to step back a minute and we're going to do a little tribute episode to somebody the respect level, I don't even know if I can measure it, that I had for this person. Without this person and his 41 Willys, this thing wouldn't exist. That's a fact. There ain't no way to really look at that. It's a sad loss, but we all know where he went, and he's staring down at all of us right now. This episode is dedicated to Gene Cromer with the Moonlighter 41 Willys gasser. Now, I'm going to try to keep this short because we don't want to burn you up. I could talk about this for an hour, but we're just going to hit high spots. The car was unveiled in 13. So in 2012, it goes back all the way to about 2012, that I kind of got asked, and I got asked way earlier than that by a mutual friend of mine and Gene's, would I want to help restore the car. Well, then I didn't hear nothing about it for a long time. It probably was damn near a year before I heard anything about it. And we're not going to get into all of that because that's a long story of how I even got involved in trying to help put it back together and this and that. And I'm just one piece of a 1,000-piece puzzle of the people that helped put that car back together. It wasn't no one person, it was the whole village. I mean, it really was. But it was such an awesome experience. It's hard to explain. And I knew a little bit about Gene growing up here in Anderson because it's both, Anderson's both our hometowns. And I'm going to tell you a quick story about the first time I've heard a story about Gene Cromer, and it was told by my dad. My dad says he's 18 years old. He's going over to Gene's with Frank Taylor, and says that as soon as he turns in the driveway at Gene's house, coming out of the garage, now I'm talking about out of the garage now, not out in the driveway, out of the garage, here come this 41 Willys with the wheels in the air coming out of the garage, and then he'd slam on the brakes and slide in the gravel. And he'd back that car back up, back in the garage, and he'd launch that car out again. And here he'd come, slide in the gravel. He'd back up, and I'm talking about, Daddy said it looked like the hood just barely missing the roof rafters and the doors that come out. And I'll never forget that story. That's just one of them things that sticks with you your whole life. Now let's fast forward to 2012. Into 2012, rolls into, say, 2013, and I get involved in helping restoring the car. And I mean, it's just the list of people that help restore the car is just so big. And I met some really nice people. I got to know more about Gene, the drag racing part of Gene, which, history just don't do injustice, because the guy had like a 70-something% win ratio, which is just kind of unheard of. That's one thing. The other thing is, when you go to his shop, you can hear the stories of the famous 60 drag racers that hung out at his shop in Anderson, South Carolina. Hubert Platt, Houston Platt. I mean, all these people, he knew them. I mean, Ed Skelton. I mean, all these guys was friends, and they all hung out there. And the more, I get to working on the car, the more history I start to learn of how Gene was, a part of drag racing history, wouldn't even know it. Besides the drag racing part of this, I got to tell you about the man. And I'm sure a lot of people was going to tell you, oh man, the Willys, I remember as a kid and this. But let me tell you about the man. I've never in my life to this point met a finer human being than Gene Cromer. I never heard him say nothing bad about nobody. I've never heard anybody say anything bad about him. He was that kind of individual. He was a good God-fearing man. He showed you the utmost respect. He was courteous. He was a walking book of knowledge. He was just the kind of man that I hope one day that I could be. You know what I mean? An honest, God-fearing, gentleman all the time type of guy. We got close, real close. So we got the car done in 2013. Long story short, I really got to know him very, very well on a personal level. And you know, and we had a lot in common, like the machining and this and that. And I grew up here, and he knew my dad for years, you know, and my dad had a Volkswagen performance shop, and Gene would balance stuff for him. And plus he knew me when he was younger, and you know, so we had a connection there. I went to weld the car. I was at a gasser race. Well, back then it was more of like a gasser show. It really wasn't really much of a race, and it was just a gasser show. But I come from dirt bikes, and I'd been wanting to do something else. And once you're competitive, you're competitive. It don't matter if it's, you know, I want to build hot rods and I want to be competitive with that, or I want to go race motors, I want to be competitive with that, or you want to do something. So I went and watched one of these races, and it was so out of control. I guess that's the best way to put it. You didn't know if that car was going to hit the wall, cross the yellow line when you shifted the gear. It was a very exciting show. And it looked like you was just having to hold on to that car just by the seat of your pants. Well, that's kind of the way I rode a dirt bike. I always just held on by the seat of my pants, and I enjoyed that. Building that car got me the bug to like, I want to build a gasser. So we found the Boogie Man, and we're not going to go through that. If you'll go back, I don't know, back in the very beginning of our episodes, I think we actually do an episode talking about dragging the Boogie Man out of the bushes. No, it's on an Octane Addicts. We got an Octane Addicts. Maybe I'll get Matt to do a link, and there's an Octane Addicts about how the Boogie Man, where we found the Boogie Man. So we're not going to get into all that. But we lost Gene last week. And I'm not even going to go into the story of how we lost him. Let's just say I think he went happy. And I know where he went, so I'm going to leave it at that. He's going to be so missed, it's not even funny. I feel real bad because the last year or so, or year and a half, since the pandemic, I didn't get to spend a lot of time with him like I wanted to. I'd bought this CNC, and he thought that was so interesting, and he's going to come down, and it's, you know, hard for him to move around these days. You know, he will be so missed, it ain't even funny. And every time I step in this car, I will not be able to forget him. It will always come back to me. When we built this car and debuted this car in September 2015 at Gene's Speed Shop, Anderson, South Carolina, was right here on the quarter panel. That's where it's always been. And as long as I own this car, that'll always be on there. It'll never go anywhere. The gas tank on this car, when I was building this car, he come walking in one evening. And this is the original 1960s Moon Eye gas tank. Gene had two famous drag cars. He had the 41 Willys, and then he had a funny car, Mustang. Okay, both of them was called the Moonlighter. Well, he had two gas tanks. Well, the better of the gas tanks, he cleaned up and put on the Moonlighter Willys when it was restored. The other one was beat up. But he come walking in the shop one afternoon, and I was building this thing, and he handed me this gas tank. And he said, this is one of the gas tanks. Now, he said, I don't know if this was the one off the Mustang or the one off the Willys. It's just one of them. And he said, you can use it as long as you want. Which, like his daughter said, that's like him giving it to you. That's just the way he was. You could use it as long as you want. So the gas tank on this car come from him and was actually raced in the 60s. And that's just so cool to me every time I get in this car, that gas tank, I try not to forget. But when I'm putting gas tank, I don't, because the lid's a little rusty. You know, it's got some pits in it. You open it up, and I mean, I ain't did nothing. I cleaned it up and knocked the dents out of it, and it's still dented. And I put it on the car, and I've been running it. And if I ever was to get rid of this car, the gas tank never goes. The gas tank will stay with me forever because he let me use it. And it's with me now, and it's never going anywhere. If you got a few minutes, Google Gene Cromer and the Moonlighter gasser. It's a 41 Willys. There's some awesome videos out there. Actually, there's some on YouTube. There's some out here on Facebook. And look him up. And not only was he just like the coolest drag racer, I mean, this guy was so ahead of everybody. He's a Ford guy, and I'm Chevrolet. But he was so ahead of everybody back in the 60s, it's not even funny. I mean, That Willys had coilovers on it in 1967. Cooney coilovers. One of 6 sets ever made. And that set right there is one I think they may know where 2 sets at, and that was one of them. When they sent them back to Cooney, Cooney rebuilt them. So it's just the history of all of that. So I just want to say he will be missed, but he won't be forgotten. Not as long as I'm driving my car, he'll never be forgotten, as far as I'm concerned. To his family, which is like my other family, which I love more than anything, I really got to know them in 2013. They welcomed me into the family like a brother. His daughter did, or both the daughters. I love you guys. We know where he's at, and he's all staring down at us. And that's it. Chris Dunn, a.k.a. the Boogie Man.